Hello?
Hello?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah. Let's start.
Yeah, let's go.
Hi, guys. Welcome to Dauntless Digital. My name is Eliza Sultan.
And this is Isra Shima. Thank you so much for tuning in our first episode of our COVID-19 series, which is social media, mental health, and Gen Z doing what Gen Z does best.
The purpose of this podcast is to explore the impact of COVID-19 on mental health and finding respite in social media. Without further ado, let's invite our guests. First, please welcome Noura Javed, who is currently serving as the Director of Marketing at Hello Pakistan magazine.
And Diane Rosegraves, child clinical psychologist and professor of psychology and counseling at Hood College, Maryland, USA.
And for our final segment, we have a very special guest coming in, Zain Hussain, who's going to be talking about the dangers of social media itself.
Here in the United States, as a college professor, it's been quite interesting. We were midway through our semester when COVID hit Maryland, and so our university closed to students, and they had just a day or two to get all of their things as much as they could and go home. We had our spring break, and so typically that's when students already are taking time away. Sometimes they were planning other trips, but in this case, everyone went home or to wherever they could go if home was not an option. And then we just started working from our homes. Our classes continued online for the rest of the semester. We weren't sure if we were going to be there, so every couple of weeks we get an update that, yeah, no, we're staying online. Yeah, no, we're staying online until the very end. And so I think that was, obviously the right choice to make, but it was really stressful and hard. I'm really lucky. I'm a bit of an introvert as well. As an extrovert, I kind of go both ways. It wasn't so problematic for me to be home. I was with my daughter, who's amazing, and so we've actually been able to have a really good time. And we have two cats who, one of them was pretty excited that we were home. The other one was like, when are you leaving? So it's been a mixed blessing of being home as well as, missing people at work and really, at the end of the day, really worried about my students. So we've been okay. We've been okay, but it's been an interesting ride for sure.
I'm glad. Noor, how has this experience been for you? I mean, staying at home and working from home. How are you doing? How are you dealing with this?
And I guess there's this meme that was going around a couple of months back that I needed 6 months vacation. For me, I was someone who needed that, right? And to be honest, I always endorsed that, right? But after the pandemic that hit us, it all changed because for someone who loves going out, who loves eating out, you said you're an introvert, I am an extrovert.
We're both
So
extroverts.
yeah, exactly. So it was honestly very hard, I'm not gonna lie. But what I've done is I've set a routine for myself. I've laid out things that I need to do. I wake up, I work, and I'm a marketeer, so work's something that's always been a major part of my day.
It's great to see how you guys have managed to adapt yourself and your lifestyle and your work to this whole situation, and hopefully you've been accommodated through it. One of the universities in Pakistan, LUMS, has recently asked more than 2,000 students to come back on campus to collect their belongings so they can carry out renovations for the incoming class, and they've done so without any restrictions. I think it's very important for institutions to now also understand that beyond their own needs and beyond their own capacity, there is a need to look outside that and look at the lives of the people who are affiliated with them. So, Diane, what do you think about this?
No, I think it's risky. I I know there have been some issues here in the United States where people needed to go back and get their things. So the colleges have created these massive signups where people can sign up for a particular time where they have like an hour and a half or they have like 3 hours, and you have to go in and just get your stuff and be away. So in order to try to create waves of people coming in to get their stuff and go, but 2,000 people all at once sounds like that's going to be a bit of a challenge to maintain everybody's safety.
I just really hope that the COVID situation just goes away soon and I'm allowed to meet my friends and life can just go back the way it was before.
Agreed. That'll be a good day.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of this is about the responsibility that a lot of these institutions take as well.
Right.
So I'd like to ask more about this, actually. So you work in the media industry. So what role do you think you guys can play in terms of ensuring public safety, raising awareness for that, and just bringing about change to mindsets that exist currently?
Well, to be honest, the media plays an enormous role. For us at Hello Pakistan, ensuring that our readers have something positive to hold on to has always been of immense importance. And I feel as part of the entertainment industry, it's not just a single magazine or a channel that could make a difference. It's something that we should all be doing. The idea for us is to basically steer clear of anything or any news or basically anything that could put anyone off. We've got about 1.1 million followers on Insta. So when you've got a following like that, you got to make sure that whatever you're putting there, exactly, it's credible.
So the impact of coronavirus would often affect people on a very visceral level, and it's a very fragile situation. So do you think that trigger warnings are something that the world and specifically the media industry should adopt while discussing this?
That would be needed, yes, but we're a capitalist society. Media doesn't want to do that. I work in an entertainment magazine. We don't want to do that. We only want to push something that gives us benefit somehow.
And that's sad, I'd say.
Yeah, exactly. It is, to be honest. And I'll be very honest with you. We have tried. We sat down with our higher ups and we tried to work out something like that, but it didn't work. Because at the day end, for us, it's all about money. And when you're in a pandemic, there's not enough money going around. So yes, we should be doing that, but we're not at the moment. No.
So part of that also happens in academics because, there's a bit of a debate whether or not at the end of the day, how much do we need to protect our students and how much do we need to support our students regarding mental health issues. If it hasn't touched you, if you don't have anyone in your family, you don't really know anyone that has been sick, then you're truly blessed. But you also don't need those those trigger warnings, right? Because it hasn't had a direct impact on you. So you might be the last person to think that you need to have that. However, the person sitting right next to you, the person sitting right behind you in class may have lost a grandparent, they may have lost a parent, and they had to lose them in such a way where they weren't able to mourn them as they otherwise would be able to because of the coronavirus. So their loved one died alone, or they weren't able to say what they wanted to say or do what they wanted to do, or even have the appropriate funerals and gatherings afterwards. So you never really got a chance to grieve, right? And now you're sitting in class and they're starting to talk about the coronavirus, and it's personal.
Right.
Yeah. So the issue becomes, how can we do that in a sensitive way? Because it very easily can be upsetting and hurtful and rubbing, like salt in a wound without preparing that person that we're going to have this conversation today. So I think it's very important, especially important in college classes and in the work that I do with students, for us to talk about it. It's a perfect place to talk about it, but to do it insensitively to what people are going through, I think is really worrisome. And, again, I think there's a range of sensitivity that faculty have that, around these issues, that some are just not thinking that it's as painful as it is for some students. And as long as it is painful for some students, then we need to put safeguards in place for all students when we have these conversations.
There's a lot of people who come from homes of intimate and domestic violence. So, what can you say about the compounding effect of that sort of abuse and the lockdown and just the pressures that surround coronavirus?
Oh, I definitely think it's worse for families. So here's the circumstance. Let's just say your abuser is in your home and now you're being told you can't leave your home. So any opportunity you had to get away from that person, or even a little bit of time or a little bit of control that you had to try to keep yourself safe, that's gone now. So you're living in the home with your perpetrator. In addition, other people sometimes have eyes on you, and that's a good thing. So if you're now no longer around other people who have eyes on you, then your situation could deteriorate, and the only person who notices is you. So I think you're taking away the very few options that people have to leave abusive situations, and then you're having them in their homes with their abusers, and nobody's monitoring. So I think that is a recipe for really serious damage to be done to these victims, and a very powerful position to put perpetrators. So I think, I hope, and I want this to not be happening, right? This is horrible. This is trauma, and this is inexcusable and unacceptable. Sadly, it's happening.
Right.
So, oftentimes, particularly in the circles or the demographic that I've grown up in, people don't actually talk about abuse that they faced in the past or are currently experiencing. In fact, they often turn to social media to facilitate masking that and the impacts that it has on them. So, do you think that social media is an appropriate instrument for them to be able to find relief, support, or even help?
I think so. I think, well, to some degree. Some people, depending on their circumstances, when you're in an abusive relationship, the perpetrator often tries to isolate you. So it may be that your social media is being monitored. It may be that you don't really have, that you're worried that you'll be identified on social media, and that could make the situation worse for you. And so it also could be that you're connected on social media to the perpetrator's family and friends.
Right.
So it can make going out and saying stuff on social media risky for someone in an abusive situation. And, the most dangerous time for someone who's in an abusive relationship is if they're trying to leave, or if they're trying to speak up. And so I caution anyone who's in a dangerous situation to reach out and potentially put themselves at risk without having an exit plan that's ready to go. So safety is the most important thing. So, sometimes social media can be helpful as far as educating you or helping you understand what's happening is not okay, and where the resources are for help, and to find other folks that you can connect with for support. But it also, again, it's a risky situation sometimes, because of the very fact that you're being monitored. Especially if you're in your home, they may have access to your social media accounts, and it may be risky to create, accounts that they don't know about. Should they be looking at your phone or monitoring your computer use? It can be a situation where it's just too risky to go on social media. But I'll pass it over to the colleague on the call with social media. Is there a way then for social media to reach into homes if it's too risky for people in homes to reach out to social media?
I think it depends.
Right.
It's like Aliza said, it's the demographics that you're surrounded with, right? Over here, I don't know how it is in US, but putting anything on social media in Pakistan is basically telling the whole world about.
Do you think that virtual or online therapy is an appropriate avenue to find support, especially considering we do live in a capitalist world, and with the increasing demand, obviously competition is going to increase. So do you think that it would act as a corrupting force as well?
Right. Well, I think the most important thing is that we have to recognize how helpful therapy can be for many people who are anxious, people who are depressed. There's not only is there research to support the benefit of talk therapy, but it also helps create a vehicle for people to grow. Therapies can be incredibly valuable for people. The challenge is that therapy usually again takes place face to face, and we're in a global pandemic. And so how can we still provide care for the people who need it in a way that's safe for the therapist and safe for the client? So, there have been a number of things that have happened in my state of Maryland. Also, my friends who have, private practices have moved their practices online. So very much like I was talking about in the classroom, how you can move what you do face-to-face onto Zoom. But you also there's a very different way of approaching therapy from the beginning if it's going to be virtual. And I've got to tell you, I'm not the biggest fan of online therapy, but I'm much worse of a fan of no therapy at all because I don't like being online. Like, I think you go where people are, and if the only way you can get to them is using technology, then use technology, because it's far worse for people to be alone with their depression or alone with their anxiety because they don't have access to care. I think one of the biggest issues we have in the United States is lack of access to care, whether it's face-to-face or whether it's even online, and having the technology available with the security measures in place for that person to get help online. So without a universal health care, without having people being able to access care whenever they need it for mental health services, we are at a significant disadvantage as a country. So I do think there is a place for teletherapy, like to be going and working using technology to help connect people for treatment. What I worry about is people seeing that as a substitute or equivalent for face-to-face relationships, because there's a lot about therapy that takes place through the relationship with the therapist. And as you guys know, to people in distress, that connection to other people is powerful. And when you're online, it's not the same level of care. And there's privacy matters as well. You can't, when people come see me for therapy, we have a controlled space, so that person is safe. When you're at your home, being able to talk openly or get that help, you might not always have the same safety. Not everybody has big homes with private rooms and private, so sometimes that can be, your privacy and your confidentiality can be compromised. Anything that they're online could end up, becoming a problem. So there are certain software programs and things that therapists will use to maintain protection of their clients. The bottom line is, it's not a substitute for being with that person and work and talk therapy, but it's better than not having anything at all. So I'm an advocate for using it to get people services, but what I am also advocating are more services to go out to people, right?
We should be using social media that way. There should be a positive impact of social media on the way people live their lives. But that's not happening, unfortunately.
First there was just the introduction of social media on the scene, and now we're trying to figure out how to use it, how to be effective online to engage social justice and to promote social change. And we're looking at Generation Z, right? We're looking at you guys, because this is what you guys do so well, and I'm always so impressed.
I think one of the greatest examples of this is the Arab Spring, where social media wasn't just used to air grievances, but it was also used to empower, it was also used to mobilize support. And the snowballing of all of this eventually led to them being able to bring about actual tangible political change. So I think that when used appropriately, social media can play a major role in bringing about political, social, legal even changes.
Just to add to that, I think that youth and social media is a combo that could either go extremely north or go extremely south. I mean, when we look at the situation in Yemen, you see that a lot of people in the US didn't know about it if it weren't for social media. And when we look at the Black Lives Matter movement in the US, a lot of people in Pakistan didn't know about it if it weren't for social media. But on the other hand, we have to be aware about the infodemic that came out of this pandemic, and also about the fake news and the spread of that. And with so much misinformation up in the sphere, that is contributing to the rise of headline stress disorder. How do you avoid that?
So what we try to do is we only publish the news that we actually know for a fact that the information here or from this particular website, we will be getting the accurate information. The thing is, all of this needs to start at the grassroots level, right? If it's not going to be one platform, it's not going to be one website that can actually bring forth the correct information. So when something happens and something makes the headlines or news comes out, it's there should be a set of guidelines that need to be followed to check for the authenticity of that news. What happens here in Pakistan is that once an issue is highlighted, everyone talks about it, and in another week or so, it's forgotten about. So consistency is what we need.
Before you go, Noor, could you tell us a little bit more about what the post-COVID industry looks like?
Post-COVID world will be difficult to navigate. I mean, people are being laid off. I personally know some people that were laid off, and brands aren't really generous about advertisements right now, which is troubling. But I'd say Hello responded to the change pretty well. We shifted on to digital form and media once COVID hit, and are hopeful to revert it back to print media once everything goes back to normal.
But this has been so delightful. I really love having this conversation. Again, we are looking to Generation Z to help us know how to best integrate social media with a moral compass and to get information. You guys have a tall task in front of you. So great job with your podcast. And I'm here and I'm cheering you all the way from Maryland in the United States.
Thank you so much. Thank you for joining us. It was really nice to talk to you.
Well, up until now, we've talked about the pros and cons of social media. But what we haven't specifically touched upon are the dangers of social media. The dangers of social media not only include fake news and misinformation, but also include cyberbullying.
With the rise of social media and digital penetration, everyone and anyone can have access to the internet. And while this can be a good thing, as we discussed earlier in the podcast, this also comes with a lot of drawbacks. And one of the gravest of these drawbacks is cyberbullying. Cyberbullying is bullying that occurs over the internet and communication networks. And it's something that has been pervasive throughout society for a very long time now. However, it's also something that it's been ignored and neglected for a very long time. Because cyberbullying is something that can only be brought forth by the victims or the perpetrators themselves, they can often have very stark consequences. Victims of cyberbullying are 2 times more likely to commit suicide or attempt to commit suicide than the average person. However, there is still a chronic lack of sympathy and neglect of the situation. Institutions refuse to take responsibility over their affiliates, for example, students participating in such activities, because they claim that it doesn't fall upon their jurisdiction. The government's response is almost laughable. They haven't set up appropriate avenues for reporting these crimes, they haven't appropriately defined what constitutes them, and they haven't laid down the punishment for participating in such activities.
The incident that compelled us to talk about cyberbullying just happened a few days ago to Mohit. Mohit is 16, Mohit has mild autism, and Mohit was bullied by 7+ people in an Instagram group. When his older brother, Zain Hussain, stumbled upon the group, he took screenshots and he went public with them. Those screenshots later went extremely viral, and people across Pakistan started pouring a huge amount of support for the family and for the victim Mohit. Later, the perpetrators apologized, but it was not just a learning moment and curve for them. It was a learning moment for everybody across Pakistan, as we realized there's not enough dialogue about autism and cyberbullying. So in order to keep the momentum going, today we have on the show Zain Hussain, Mohit's older brother, who will be telling us about what happened. First of all, Zain, thank you so much for joining us. And would you like to start off by telling us your first-hand account of the incident and what followed?
پچھلے 2-3 ہفتوں سے اور پچھلے 2-3 ہفتوں میں مجھے وہ آلموسٹ روز ایک نہ ایک دفعہ یہ بات آتا تھا کہ اس کے ساتھ اس طرح کچھ ہو رہا ہے, لیکن اس میں اس نے مجھے کبھی زیادہ اس نے انفارمیشن نہیں دی, نہ ہی اس نے زیادہ میں سے اس طرح کی بات, اس نے زیادہ کچھ شیئر نہیں کیا, اس نے بس ہلکی ہلکی سے مجھے ہنٹ سی تھی کہ اس نے. وہ گروپ ایکچولی فوری بوائز کے اکاؤنٹ سے میں نے دیکھا تھا کیونکہ وہ ان کے میسج ریکویسٹ پہ تھا. تو جیسے میں نے گروپ کھولا تھا کہ میں نے فوراً میں نے جا کے میسیجز پڑھے, اور جیسے ہی میسیجز پڑھے میں مذاق نہیں کر رہا, میرا ہاتھ کانپنے لگے تھے کیونکہ مجھے سمجھ نہیں آئی تھی کہ میں اب کروں کیا, میں ان لوگوں کو کیا جواب دوں. ان سب کی میں جب شکلیں دیکھ رہا تھا سب کی داڑھی منہ چاہی ہوئی تھی, اور ہو سکتے میرے سے زیادہ آئی ہو. تو خیر جو اس گروپ کا ایڈمن تھا اس وقت, اس کی میں نے فوراً اس کی میں نے پروفائل کی اسکرین شاٹ لی, میں اس کی پروفائل ہی دیکھ رہا تھا, اور جب میں نے بیک سوائپ کیا تو گروپ تھا ہی نہیں کہ کہتے ہیں میں نے, کیونکہ وہ میسج ریکویسٹ کو ایکسیپٹ نہیں کیا تھا. جب وہ گروپ سے مجھے ریموو کیا تو وہ غائب ہو گیا تھا گروپ, اور میں اس گروپ کی ایک بھی اسکرین شاٹ نہیں لے پایا. لیکن خیر کہ بعد میں نے صحیح دانش علی کو جو گروپ کا ایڈمن تھا اس کو میں نے میسج کیا تھا کہ بھائی, بڑے پیارا میں نے اس کو میسج کیا تھا, میں نے اس کو کہا تھا کہ یار جو آپ لوگوں نے گروپ بنایا ہے جس پہ آپ لوگ میرے بھائی کو وزٹ کرتے ہو اس کو مجھے بھی ایڈ کرو. آگے سے مجھے وہ گالیاں دینے لگ گیا, اس نے مجھے گالیاں سنائی, میں نے آرام سے سنی, میں نے پھر اس کو بتایا کہ جاری دیکھو ایسے ویسے کوئی سین نہیں ہے, ٹھیک ہے پتہ تو مجھے لگ گیا, اب تو تم صرف یہ کر سکتے ہو کہ یا تو تم اس طرح کرو کہ جو تمہارے گروپ ہے اس میں مجھے واپس ایڈ کر دو, یا پھر اگر تم اس طرح کہتے ہو کہ واقعی میں اسی طرح کے گروپ ڈیلیٹ ہو گئے تو پھر تم ایک اور گروپ بناؤ جس میں یہ سارے لوگ تھے, کیونکہ مجھے پتہ ہے کون کون لوگ ہیں, میں نے شکلیں دیکھی ہوئی, مجھے نام نہیں یاد لیکن مجھے ان کی پروفائل پکچرز یاد ہیں, اور وہ سارے لوگ ہونے چاہیے تاکہ میں ان سب سے بات کر سکوں تاکہ یہ بات جلدی مکے. اور اسے اسی طرح کیا. جیسے میں گروپ پہ پہنچا میں نے فوراً ان کے بایوز وہ ممبرس میں گیا, سب کے بایوز کی میں نے اسکرین شاٹس لی, سب کے نام میرے پاس آئے, اس سے پہلے کوئی چینج کر سکے یا کچھ. اور جب میں پہنچا تب وہاں پر آلریڈی میرا سہاگت ہی گالیوں سے ہوا تھا, ٹھیک ہے, بہت مزہ آیا مجھے. لیکن جیسے میں گروپ پہ پہنچا نا, میں نے اوپر سوائپ کیا, اور اوپر جو ابھی ساری جو اسکرین شاٹس پار ہوئی ہیں وہ اس گروپ میں سے جو کیا کہتے ہیں ایک گروپ نہیں تھا, یہ وہ دوسرا گروپ ہے. ابھی تو پہلے والے گروپ کی اسکرین شاٹس آئی ہی نہیں ہے, لیکن دوسرے گروپ میں اتنا کچھ ہے کہ لوگ پہلے گروپ, مجھے نہیں لگتا پہلے گروپ کی ضرورت بھی پڑے گی کسی کو.
ایگزیکٹلی, ہم دوسروں کی ڈسکشن کنورسیشن چل رہی ہے.
ایسے ہی ہے کیا کہتے ہیں. خیر اوپر میں گیا, اوپر میں نے ساری اسکرین شاٹس وغیرہ لی, اور اس میں بھی اسی لیول کی بات ہوئی تھی. خیر کیا کہتے ہیں جب میں نے اسکرین شاٹس لی تو میں نے ان سب کو میسج کیا کہ مجھے پتہ ہے تم سب کون کون ہو, میرے پاس تم سب کی کیا کہتے ہیں بایوس کی اسکرین شاٹ ہے, اور میں تم سب کو ایکسپوز کروں گا. اور ان سب نے مجھے لکھا تھا کہ ہمارا کچھ بھی نہیں پڑھ سکتے, تمہارے میں کچھ بھی نہیں ہے, ہم کراچی میں رہ کے تم سے کیوں ڈرتے. اس طرح کی سچویشن میں آپ کبھی بھی جلدی رسپونڈ نہیں کر سکتے. میں نے ایک پورا دن لگایا تھا جس پہ میں نے کچھ بھی نہیں کیا تھا. میں لٹرلی بتاتا ہوں میں نے کیا کیا تھا. میں نے فون سائڈ پہ رکھا تھا, چارجنگ پہ لگا ہوا تھا, میں بھول گیا تھا کہ میرے پاس فون بھی ہے, اور میں نے صرف سوچا تھا کہ مجھے کیا کرنا چاہیے, اور میں نے پریسائزلی سوچا تھا کہ میں کس طرح کیا چیز کروں گا اور وہ ہوئے گی, اور ایک کام اور کلیکٹڈ مائنڈ کے ساتھ سوچا تھا, اور مجھے پتا تھا میں صحیح ہوں, اور کیونکہ مجھے اتنا شور ہوں کہ میں صحیح ہوں, مجھے پتا ہے کہ لوگ بھی یہ چیز دیکھ پائیں گے.
2015 میں ایک آرگنائزیشن جس کا نام ہے آٹزم ریسرچ جرنل, انہوں نے ایک آرٹیکل پوسٹ کیا تھا جس میں دے ٹاکڈ اباؤٹ دا فیکٹ کہ 44% آف پیپل ہو سفر فرام آٹزم ہیو بین بلیڈ ونس ان دیئر لائف ٹائم. اور انہوں نے بھی پہلے مینشن بھی کیا تھا کہ موہت ہیز بین بلیڈ بیفور. تو کڈ یو جسٹ ٹیل اس کہ جو ابھی جو کیس ہوا ہے ہاؤ از دیٹ ڈفرینٹ فرام اس سے پہلے جو کیسز ہوئے تھے؟
خیر پہلے جتنی دفعہ اس نے کچھ ہو چکا ہے ہمیشہ وہ موہت سے چھوٹے بچے ہوتے تھے, اور میں نے جب بھی ان سے بات کرنے کی کوشش کی وہ کبھی اچھی طریقے سے نہیں گیا, کیونکہ وہ چھوٹے بچے ان کو میں منع بھی نہیں کر سکتا. لیکن اس دفعہ یہ ایک ایسا ہوا تھا کہ دیکھا تھا نا, اس میں کوئی بھی ایک ایسا بچہ نہیں تھا جو موہت سے چھوٹا ہو. یہ سارے بچے وہ تھے جو میری اور ہو سکتا ہے تمہاری ایج کے ہوں, جو میچور اور باتوں کو سمجھتے ہیں, اور موہت سے تو کم از کم زیادہ میچور ہیں نا, عقل مند لوگ ہیں. ان کو پتہ ہے کہ کیا کرنا ہے, ان کو پتہ ہے کہ زندگی کس طرح گزارنی, ان کو پتہ ہے کہ چلاکیاں کس طرح کرنی, پتہ ہے کہ تم اس سے جو بات کرو کہ وہ اسی بات کو مانے گا, اور وہ سوچے گا ہی نہیں کہ اس بات کا مطلب بھی کیا ہے. ایسا ہے کہ نہیں؟ وہ تم اس کو جو بھی کہو گے وہ مان لے گا. لیکن یار اس کو وہ چلاکیاں نہیں سمجھ آتی جس طرح ہمیں آتی ہیں, جس طرح ان لوگوں کو آتی ہیں. اس کو اس چیز کی سمجھ نہیں ہے, وہ ان کو پتہ نہیں کتنے عرصے سے اپنا دوست مانتے رہے اور یہ اس کی دوستی کے ناطے اس کے مزے لیتے رہے ہیں بس.
So, do you feel a sense of empowerment through this whole process? And do you think that social media is an appropriate avenue to be able to voice issues like these and find solutions to them?
لوگوں کو اس چیز کی نہیں اویئرنیس کہ اگر وہ آواز اٹھائیں گے نا تو لوگ سنیں گے. میں نے آواز اٹھائی اور تم دیکھ لو کہ کتنے لوگوں نے میری آواز سنا ہے. ہر ایک مجھے ہزاروں کے حساب سے میسیجز آ رہے ہیں جو لوگ اپنی اسٹوریز مجھے بتا رہے ہیں, جن کے اندر کبھی ہمت نہیں ہوئی کہ وہ اپنی آواز اٹھائیں. لیکن صرف بات یہ ہوتی ہے کہ آپ آواز کم از کم اٹھانا شروع تو کرو. آپ ایک دفعہ آواز پھیرو اور میں بتا رہا ہوں کہ سب آپ کی بات سنیں گے.
اچھا, تو سنس دس موومنٹ از آن سوشل میڈیا, تو ہمیں یہ بات بھی بتائے کہ جو کچھ پرپیٹریٹرس تھے, کچھ بلیز تھے, وہ پہلے مینٹل ہیلتھ اویئرنیس کے بارے میں انسٹاگرام میں باتیں کرتے تھے اینڈ لائک اسٹف لائک دیٹ, تو ان کی ایک امیج بنی ہوئی تھی کہ دے سپورٹ دیٹ, لیکن ایسا نہیں ہوا. ان کی اصلیت اب پتہ چلی ہے ہمیں. تو لگتا ہے کہ لائک اس کی وجہ سے اب ہماری موومنٹ میں بھی کچھ ایسے لوگ ہوں گے جو جینوئن نہیں ہیں, وہ صرف اور صرف دے جمپنگ آن دا بینڈ ویگن, رائٹ, اور وہ اویئرنیس بھی نہیں پھیلاتے ہیں سب کے سامنے, ان کے سامنے بولتے ہیں بٹ لائک وہ خود کبھی اس پہ امپلیمنٹ نہیں کرتے. تو تمہیں لگتا ہے کہ ہماری موومنٹ سے کاؤنٹر پروڈکٹیو ہے, اور پھر اس سے, یا پھر تمہیں لگتا ہے کہ اس سے پھر بھی فائدہ ہو سکتا ہے بیکاز زیادہ لوگوں کو بات پہنچ رہی ہے آگے تک؟
جینوئن ان شیئرنگ دس, یار آپ کو کبھی بھی نہیں پتہ چل سکتا. دیکھو لکھ تو کوئی بھی سکتا ہے اور میں بہت آسانی سے شیئر کر سکتا ہوں اس کو پڑھے بھی بغیر, لیکن جو میری اسٹوری آگے پڑھے گا اس کو تو یہ لگے کہ ہاں یار یہ بھائی یہ بندہ جو ہے یہ صحیح کیا کہتے ہیں, اس چیز کو سپورٹ کرتے ہیں, اس چیز کو مانتے ہیں, اس کے اچھی بلیفس اس بارے میں. دیکھو کیا کہتے ہیں, جو جن لوگوں نے موہت کی اسٹوری شیئر کی ہے نا, اگر 10 لوگوں نے کی ان میں سے کوئی 5 لوگ جو ہیں وہ خود بھی بلی کرتے ہیں. جب کیا کہتے ہیں اتنے بڑے اسکیل پہ ایک موومنٹ اس میں چلے گی, تو کیا کہتے ہیں بے شک کیا کہتے ہیں جن لوگوں نے شیئر کیا ان کو نہیں پتہ ہوئے گا, لیکن جب وہ کسی سے جا کے بات کریں گے اس چیز کے بارے میں کہ تم لوگوں نے دیکھا کہ موہت کی اسٹوری کا کیا بنا ہے, تم نے حیا کی دیکھی, اور آگے جب ڈسکشن تو بڑھے گی اور آٹزم کا کیا کہتے ہیں چیپٹر بیچ میں انٹروڈیوس ہوئے گا, اور بلنگ کے کیا کہتے ہیں ٹاپک بیچ میں انٹروڈیوس ہوئے گا, تو تمہیں نہیں لگتا کہ تھوڑی سی اویئرنیس اسپریڈ ہوئے گی نا. میرا پورا پرپس تھا اور میرا جو پورا آبجیکٹیو تھا وہ یہی تھا کہ ایک تو یہ اسپریڈ ہو اسٹوری, اور دوسرا اویئرنیس کریٹ ہو.
So there's obviously a lot of suggestions and input about how you guys should be dealing with this issue, and everyone has different opinions. Some people are more aggressive than others. Some people are advocating for a more rehabilitative system, which I believe you and your brother also want. So what do you think about this, and how do you think this happens?
الیزا, پاکستان جس طرح کا ملک ہے نا, اس کے جو لوگ ہیں ان کے ہر بندے کے نا اپنے قسم کے ویوز ہیں. ہر بندے کی جو بیک گراؤنڈ ہے اس طرح وہ مجبور ہوتا ہے سوچنے پہ. لیکن میں نے کم از کم جتنا دیکھا ہے نا اس سچویشن میں, زیادہ تر جو میں نے لوگ دیکھے وہ جس طرح میں چاہتا ہوں وہ اسی طرح کے کہتے ہیں بات کو اسپریڈ کر رہے ہیں, اور ان کی اویئرنیس ہے اس چیز پہ, اور اگر نہیں بھی ہے تو ان کے, میں یہ یقین کرتا ہوں کہ ان کے دوست ان کے لیے کر رہے ہیں. کو جو صحیح اور پازیٹیو پیغام ہے سب میں سے ان کو وہی ملتا ہے, لیکن جن کو نہیں مل رہا ان کے لیے میں نے اور میرے دوستوں نے اسٹوریز لگائی تھی, اگر تم ان کو اسی طرح بلی کرو گے تو تمہارے ان کے بیچ میں فرق کیا رہ جائے گا.
اچھا, تو زین, کیونکہ اب اس بارے میں آٹزم کے بارے میں, ڈیولپمنٹل ڈس آرڈرس کے بارے میں ایک بات شروع ہو ہی چکی ہے, تو میرا ایک سوال ہے کہ ڈو یو ہیو اینی سجیشنز, ایڈوائس اور اینی تھنگ دیٹ کوڈ ہیلپ اے پرسن جو کہ از انگیجنگ ود somebody who has a developmental disorder, who has autism, who has a mental illness, who has a cognitive disorder, یا پھر لائک مطلب کسی طرح میں بھی اگر آپ کو ہیلپ کرے وہ ایک گیپ برج کرنے میں, جو کہ نیوروٹیپیکلز ہم لوگ جو کہ ہم اپنے بلبوتے پہ کر سکتے ہیں. تو کوئی ایسی ایڈوائس یا پھر کیا بھی ایسی چیز ہم اڈاپٹ کر سکتے ہیں جس سے بات کرنے میں آسانی ہو سکے؟
لوگوں کے ساتھ نہیں, آپ کو ہر ایک بندے کے ساتھ پیشنس اور آرام پیار محبت سے بات کرو نا, کوئی بندہ آپ کو کچھ بھی نہیں کہے گا. اور اگر آپ یہ آٹسٹک بندے کے ساتھ یہ کر سکتے ہو, وہ تو آپ کو وہ پیار سمجھ لے گا. آپ زندگی میں نے کافی اس طرح آٹسٹک لوگوں کے ساتھ اور بچوں کے ساتھ میں نے گزاری, اور میں بہت خوش ہوتا ہوں اس طرح لوگوں کے رہوں, کیونکہ میرے خیال میں نا جو بالکل जेन्युइन और प्योर बंदे हैं ना, बिल्कुल जो ट्रांसपेरेंट बंदे हैं, वो ऑटिस्टिक लोग होते हैं. क्योंकि वो दुनिया को ना क्या कहते हैं बिल्कुल क्लियर सामने देख सकते हैं. उनके दिमाग में कोई चालाकी और क्या कहते हैं अजीब किस्म के फजूल किस्म के ख्याल नहीं आते. बंदे के साथ सिर्फ ये करो कि आप उसके साथ नाइस हो, वो जो भी आपको कह रहा है आप उसको बैकअप करो. आप बस चेयर को, आप कसम से एक दफा बंदे को चेयर करो, आपने अगर उसके मुंह पे स्माइल दिलवा दी तो आप समझ लो कि आपका काम पूरा है इस दुनिया में. जो मोहित मेरी और मेरी फैमिली की जिंदगी में है ना, वो अल्लाह मियां की तरफ से गिफ्ट है. जो अंडरस्टैंडिंग मुझे मोहित की वजह से हो सकी है ना, अपने आप की और इस दुनिया की और लोगों की, उसने जितनी मुझे पावर दी और जितने मुझे मैच्योर की और जितना मुझे डेवलप की है, मैं कभी सोच भी नहीं सकता था कि मैं किसी और जिंदगी में किस तरह होता, मैं मोहित के बगैर किस तरह होता. मुझे नहीं पता कि अगर मैं उसकी क्या कहते हैं सिचुएशन में हूं तो मैं क्या करता, लेकिन मैं अल्लाह का शुक्र है कि मोहित मेरे से ज्यादा स्ट्रांग है. मोहित अब संभाल सकता है अपने आप को, क्या कहते हैं अपने आप को रोक सकता है, और इस तरह की जो बातें उसकी क्या कहते हैं जो दिमाग के साथ खेलती हैं, जिस तरह की बातें वो अपने आप तक नहीं पहुंचने देता.
So there's obviously a very broad range of definitions and understandings of autism, especially because it's known as a spectrum disorder or illness. So what do you have to say about that? Like, do you think that the world could ever truly understand what it feels like to be an autistic child or a person who suffers from autism?
ऑटिज्म है ना, उसको कोई एक बंदा ना कंप्लीटली स्पेसिफाई नहीं कर सकता, उसको बिल्कुल एक्सप्लेन नहीं कर सकता. ठीक है, कभी क्या कहते हैं, कभी इस तरह की कोई क्या कहते हैं बुक या वीडियो या मूवी नहीं आनी जो लिखे ऑटिज्म एक्सप्लेन और सब उस पे उसी चीज में माने, क्योंकि उसको हम लोग डिस्क्राइब नहीं कर सकते, क्योंकि हमने कभी उनकी नजर से दुनिया देखी नहीं है. हर एक बच्चा जो कि ऑटिस्टिक होता है, कोई दो बच्चे एक जैसे नहीं है. मैं कभी इस तरह मुझे नहीं मिला.
Thank you so much for coming on the podcast then. And I completely agree with you on the fact that autism has no set definition because of the fact that it's such a broad spectrum. However, we've linked a few websites and articles down below for those of you who want to educate yourselves further. One thing that we wanted to discuss before ending the podcast was talk a little about the perpetrator and the treatment in this whole scenario. I mean, personally for me, I endorse the Kala culture, but cancel culture doesn't ring the bells for me. Because let's be honest for a second, sending rape threats, sending death threats to these bullies are not going to make them realize their mistake. It just makes the matter worse, as bullying the bullies is not the solution.
While I agree with the fact that bullying the bully is not the solution, I also think that cancel culture becomes really important here. Cancel culture isn't about sending threats to these perpetrators. It's about trying to fill the gap that exists between certain people and the legal system or the government. When the government can't provide the avenues for these people to obtain justice, they turn to social media and cancel culture to do the same. The impact of cancel culture is exactly the same as it would be for the legal system as well. When a person comes out of jail, for example, if he's like sexually harassed someone, he becomes a sexual offender and isn't able to get jobs. His life is affected. And the same things happen with cancel culture until they are ready to reform themselves and their behavior. So I think that cancel culture is something that provides people with the ability to come out and not be afraid of the consequences for themselves, because they know that the person they're coming out against is going to be the one who's going to face the consequences.
So I agree with the first part of what you said, that the cancel culture provides like a bridge between the people and the legal system. But my question to you is, who's providing justice when you're calling out somebody on Instagram comments, Instagram DMs, Instagram likes? Because of the fact that cancel culture prevails on social media, there's a lack of accountability, right? So in the case of a legal system where people would actually be held accountable for their actions, the police would come to their house with a warrant. But in this case, what's happening is that people can easily flee the scene
such as a popular YouTuber, not a popular YouTuber, just a YouTuber, Omar Naman Khan, was called out like a year ago by multiple girls on charges of sexual assault and inappropriate comments and stuff like that. And he deleted his account. But now he's made a comeback, and suddenly everybody thinks it's okay to follow him just because of the fact that now he's made a new account. He's never apologized for it. He's never meaningfully apologized for it. He's never shown any sign of change, never shown any sign of growth. So why are we forgiving him?
So on your first point, the fact of the matter is the legal system gives the whole responsibility of the executioner to one person or just a handful of jury members. But the internet and cancel culture allows that responsibility to be diffused amongst multiple people with multiple different perspectives and views. And I think those different experiences and perspectives do counterbalance each other. The case that you brought forth, I understand that that may happen, but the fact that people were able to start a dialogue and bring forth their experiences is good enough, because this is eventually going to ripple. And honestly, I do feel that it can bring about institutionalized change. So I think as long as people are controlling what they're saying to these perpetrators and they aren't being harmed, just calling them out and telling them that what's happened is wrong and you should face the consequences for it is just the same as the workings of the legal system itself.
Aliza, I think we both stand on like different sides of the debate, and but at the same time, I think we both can agree that it takes immense amounts of courage to come forward with your story. So kudos to the victim in every single situation. Comment down below, guys, what do you think about the situation? And what do you think about cancel culture? What do you guys think about call-out culture? And let us know so we can keep this healthy debate going.
Guys, please let us know what you think. We can't wait to read all of your comments, and catch us next week when we talk about education and the healthcare system in the age of COVID-19. This is it from Aliza Sultan.
And this is it from Mr. Ashima. Thank you so much for joining in. Take care, stay safe, and most importantly, be kind.